Ukraine is no longer just fighting along the front lines, battling Russian forces in occupied regions like Luhansk and Donetsk. Now it's fighting a second war, a secret war over the border and inside Russia itself. In western, central and even eastern regions of Russia, Ukrainian drones and missiles are an increasingly common sight, raining down fire from above on important military buildings and pieces of infrastructure. As these attacks become more frequent, it becomes significantly harder for the Russian President Vladimir Putin to tell his people that everything is fine. Bit by bit, the illusion of safety he strives so hard to create is being obliterated, and countless Russians are waking up to the harsh reality of this conflict. This phenomenon is occurring throughout Russia, but is particularly prevalent in the Bryansk region, which sits in western Russia, sandwiched between Ukraine to the south and Belarus to the north. Home to more than 1.1 million people and stretching out across 13,458 square miles, Bryansk's close proximity to Ukraine has made it a popular target for Kyiv's forces. And as the area comes under increasing pressure, local officials are finding it harder and harder to convince the region's people that all is well and they have nothing to fear. Only days ago, on the night of October 20, the most recent Ukrainian raid on Bryansk took place, and it's fascinating to look at how Kremlin officials reported the raid compared to how local news platforms and media organizations within Bryansk actually covered the incident. In Moscow, the Russian Defense Ministry issued a simple statement acknowledging that a mere 2 Ukrainian drones allegedly passed over the border from the Chernihiv region of Ukraine and into Bryansk before being swiftly shot down by Russian Army air defense systems. The official statement went on to note that there were no injuries, no deaths, and no damage in the area. If that report is accurate, then it sounds like this was an utterly insignificant incident, barely even worth reporting on or discussing in any further detail. The Russian military spotted a couple of drones and shot them down, and that was that. At least, that's what the Kremlin wants everyone to think. However, digging a little deeper into this story, local Bryansk news agencies paint a very different picture of events, a picture that's much more chaotic and concerning from Russia's point of view. Reports from the town of Klintsy, which is home to around 60,000 people and situated in the far southwest corner of the Bryansk region, just a short distance from the borders to both Belarus and Ukraine, state that the night was one of drama and fear for the local population. According to their accounts, air raid warnings and sirens rang out throughout the night, combined with the sounds of anti-aircraft cannons and mobile machine gun crews firing into the sky in a desperate attempt to bring Ukrainian drones down to earth. Footage captured by locals and shared on the Astra Telegram channel at least partly confirms this, as it shows the air raid warning message repeating on a Klintsy resident's television. Local reports also state that there were in fact several instances of drone impacts and damage to local buildings, and one resident, a male teenager, was even injured at the scene. A local Telegram news channel, entitled We Listen to Klintsy, provided an in-depth account of the evening's events. Overnight, Ukrainian Nazis attacked the city of Klintsy using fixed-wing UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. As a result of the barbaric actions of the Ukrainian armed forces, a teenager born in 2010 sustained injuries. An ambulance crew provided the boy with all the necessary medical care at the scene. Windows were damaged in 2 apartment buildings. 3 civilian vehicles were hit and damaged by shrapnel. Details will come after authorities inspect the scene in the morning. Even the region's governor, Alexander Bogomaz, could not cover up what had happened. Posting on his own Telegram channel, Bogomaz wrote, "More vile attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces against civilians. A detailed official inspection of the damage will be carried out in the morning." These 2 contrasting versions of events could hardly be more different. On the one hand, the Russian Defense Ministry statement suggests that nothing of note occurred in Bryansk on October 20. On the other hand, numerous local news agencies and even the regional governor were posting about vile attacks and Ukrainian Nazis bombarding their region, damaging vehicles, buildings and more. Those who have been following the war closely for some time will already know that this is the exact sort of scenario that plays out on a regular basis. So often, when Ukraine launches a successful strike of any kind on Russian soil, the Kremlin's propaganda machine instantly activates, using any means at its disposal to cover up the truth. There have been numerous defense ministry statements claiming that only minimal damage was incurred, or in some instances, no damage at all was sustained to military sites, refineries, ports, or production plants, despite reams of image and video evidence to the contrary. It's all part of the classic Kremlin playbook. By hiding the truth, twisting the narrative, and masking the facts, Putin can continue to fool at least some of the Russian population into believing that he's completely in control, that the special military operation is still going to plan, and that their homeland is just as powerful as it's ever been. More importantly, it creates the aforementioned illusion of safety. It makes Russian communities feel more at ease with the idea that the war won't affect them personally. That way, even those who may have doubts about the value or purpose of the conflict can still feel that the Kremlin is looking out for them, and that they can get on with their lives in a state of relative peace and security, calmly confident that no enemy drones or bombs will suddenly appear in their hometowns. Typically, regional governors and other lower-level officials around Russia are encouraged to toe the line and follow the Kremlin's example. They repeat and reinforce the ideas that all is well, everyone is safe, and a big Russian victory is right around the corner. It's a technique snatched straight from the pages of George Orwell's seminal work 1984. But this is no novel. It's the real world where the Kremlin's carefully crafted illusion is being well and truly shattered by Ukrainian forces. As evident from the recent incident in Bryansk, even officials and media organizations that would usually simply echo the Kremlin's calm statements are now breaking rank and sharing their versions of events in gritty detail. The reason for this is most likely quite simple. Officials in regions like Bryansk are simply no longer able to keep up the pretense that everything is fine in their territories. They're suffering too often and too overtly, and they know that they would look foolish in the eyes of the people that elect them if they tried to cover up the facts. Earlier on October 20, for example, another attack occurred, leaving a Russian serviceman named Ivan Slabchenko with multiple wounds, according to another Astra report. The news outlet wrote on Telegram, "A Russian armed forces serviceman was wounded in the Bryansk region, according to Astra sources. In the Suzmesky district, serviceman Ivan Slabchenko was hospitalized with multiple wounds. Astra sources in the region's medical services reported. He was injured in an attack by an FPV drone. Local authorities usually do not report injuries among military personnel." As the post notes, local officials typically don't go to the trouble of talking much, or at all, about injuries to military personnel. But in this case, plenty of people across Bryansk are aware of what happened to Ivan Slabchenko, because they're starting to see, hear and feel the effects of Ukraine's attacks more deeply and pertinently in their everyday lives. Numerous other incidents have been recorded in the region in recent weeks. One recent attack, for example, involved at least one Ukrainian drone striking an agricultural facility in the village of Drubchevesk. No humans were killed or injured in the attack, but an unspecified number of livestock and chickens were killed, with the facility primarily used for raising cattle and poultry for meat. This appears to be something of an outlier as far as Ukrainian attacks on Russian soil are concerned. The majority of the country's deep strikes in Russia focus exclusively on sites of military importance, like command posts, headquarters, and airfields, or other critical pieces of infrastructure that help to power the Russian economy and raise funds for the Kremlin's war machine, such as oil refineries, fuel storage facilities, and power stations. Kyiv is not in the habit of hitting targets like farming facilities, so it may be that this attack was either accidental or that Ukrainian forces had some unknown reason for targeting this site in particular. Either way, it's just one of the many confirmed attacks across the region, and almost all of the others are more in line with Ukraine's usual strategy and tactical target selection. In late September, for example, reports emerge of a Ukrainian drone and missile strike on the Elektrodetal factory in the Bryansk town of Karachev. The factory reportedly produces vital components for the Kremlin's military machine, including electrical connectors that are used in aircraft antennas and various pieces of military hardware. In a detailed Telegram post, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine claimed full responsibility for the strike. An enterprise that manufactures products for military needs was hit. As part of reducing the capabilities of the enemy's occupation army, on September 29, units of the missile forces and artillery of the armed forces of Ukraine, in cooperation with other components of the defense forces, launched 4 products during a missile strike at the Karachev plant, Elektrodetal, Karachev City, Bryansk region, Russia. The flight range is over 240 kilometers. Karachev plant, Elektrodetal, produces a variety of electrical connectors for military and general industrial applications, including low-frequency, high-frequency, and combined connectors. The products are used in aerospace, electronics, instrument making, and other industries. These include, in particular, connectors for printed circuit boards, military equipment, aircraft, antennas, base stations, and other systems, as well as components for various measuring instruments. Explosions and a fire were recorded on the territory of the facility. Images and videos also soon spread across social media, revealing the full extent of the damage as thick black clouds of smoke filled the skies and the sounds of explosions rang around the town. Days later, an even more ferocious wave of attacks hit the region, with Ukrainian forces focusing on 3 distinct targets dotted across Bryansk, all related to the energy sector: a major thermal power plant in Klintsy, an electrical substation, and an oil pipeline pumping station. As Astra reported, on the night of October 6, the Bryansk region was hit by a massive missile attack. At least 2 Ukrainian missiles hit the thermal power plant in Klintsy. Due to damage to the gas distribution center, gas supplies to the plant were cut off. As of that night, more than half of the city's residents were left without heat, according to sources in the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations. The type of missiles used in the attack is unknown to Astra. Astra previously geolocated footage from Klintsy after the shelling. The Klintsy Thermal Power Plant, TPP, is a gas-fired combined heat and power plant in the city of Klintsy, Bryansk Oblast. It's the city's main source of heat. Additionally, the A10 Steel Horse Line dispatch station in the Bryansk region was attacked again overnight. This is a linear production and control station belonging to Transneft Druzhba JSC. The station was previously attacked on September 22, as reported by Astra. Additionally, the Natopovichi electrical substation was attacked, causing power outages in 2 districts for an hour. 3 targets taken out in a span of a single night. Tens of thousands of people left without heat in their homes. Countless residents watching from the windows as Ukrainian missiles soared across the skies and fires lit up the sky. All over Russia, similar stories are playing out. And with so many people literally seeing these attacks happen with their own eyes, and many defying the Kremlin's law by capturing the incidents on camera and sharing the footage online, it's no longer possible for Putin and his countless obedient officials to act like everything is all right. Russia is under attack, and an increasingly large part of the population can see it, especially in Bryansk, which is, according to some reports, one of the hardest hit regions of them all. This is undoubtedly due to the fact that, as mentioned earlier on, it's situated so close to Ukraine, plus the fact that it's home to various important pieces of energy infrastructure, including those high-value targets that Ukraine has gone into the habit of taking out in recent months. In addition, large parts of Bryansk's territory are covered in thick woodland and dense wetlands, providing ideal cover for Ukrainian commando raids and covert attacks. As well as the incidents detailed earlier on, the region also suffered another recent drone and cruise missile strike to the Bryansk city power plant and nearby transformers, severing the supply of electricity to more than 1 million Russian citizens for several days. Soon after, a salvo of precision-guided US-made artillery rockets hit a critical node of the Druzhba pipeline, not far from the village of Unetcha. Ukraine has also established operational forces behind enemy lines, attacking Russian infrastructure from within and catching the enemy off guard. On October 19, according to the Kyiv Post, saboteurs operating as part of the Partisan movement reportedly used incendiary devices to destroy a communications tower in the Zhukov border district. Open-source intelligence analysts later found evidence to suggest that several nearby support buildings had also been caught up in the ensuing fires, with Russian border troops in the region quickly cut off from their real-time surveillance and radio links used for monitoring almost 100 miles of the Ukraine-Russia border. Once again, Governor Bogomaz had plenty to say about the attack, choosing his words carefully to paint Ukrainian forces in the worst possible light. Tonight, Ukrainian terrorists attempted another dirty trick in our rear areas, sabotaging communications infrastructure in Zhukov district. This cowardly act left our border guards without vital links for hours, endangering our troops and civilians alike. We will hunt down these saboteurs and restore order. Bryansk will not bow to Kyiv's aggression. Back in late September, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces also revealed astonishing video footage showing an extremely rare incident in which a Russian Air Force Mi-8 transport assault helicopter was shot out of the air by a FPV drone strike. Open source researchers once more got to work to figure out where this incident actually happened, with many concluding that the video was captured in the Klimovo district of Bryansk, barely 12 miles from the border with Ukraine. Even going back to 2024, the Bryansk region was still one of Kyiv's top targets at the time. In October of last year, for instance, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces announced a successful drone attack on an enormous ammunition depot close to the town of Karachev in Bryansk, where Russia was said to be stockpiling huge amounts of North Korean artillery shells, as well as missiles, glide bombs and more. According to Ukraine's reports, some of the munitions were simply sitting out in the open, revealing how utterly unprepared Russian forces were for an attack of this kind. In a Facebook post detailing the incident, the General Staff wrote, "Last night, units of the Unmanned Systems Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, jointly with other components of the Defense Forces, conducted a strike on the 67th Arsenal of the Main Missile and Artillery Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation in the Bryansk region. According to the available information, the arsenal stored ammunition for missile and artillery systems, including those delivered from North Korea, as well as glide bombs. Much of the ammunition was stored in the open. Explosions were recorded on the territory of the arsenal. It's reported that local authorities have blocked the road near the arsenal. The results of the combat operation are being updated. Striking such arsenals creates serious logistical problems for the Russian army, thus significantly reducing the offensive capabilities of the occupiers on threatened axes." Ever since then, Bryansk has suffered an increasing array of similar strikes, and they're occurring more regularly than ever before, with Governor Bogomaz recently claiming, "The quantity of strikes has tripled. It's more than ever before. This is how they, Ukrainian forces, show their true colors, the faces of fascists." While Bogomaz is clearly using the most evocative and ludicrous language he can possibly think of to keep the people on side, his statements prove one crucial thing. He, like many other Russian governors and officials, is no longer in a position where he can maintain the myth that Russia is still a safe, secure place to be. He's forced to admit that Ukrainian attacks have happened, are ongoing, and will continue to occur in the weeks and months ahead for as long as the war goes on. The more Russian people hear that sort of talk from their elected officials and regional governments, the more fearful and frustrated they're going to become. And that's exactly what Ukraine wants. As well as working hard to deal damage to high-value targets all over Russia's regions, Kyiv's forces also want to bring the war home to the Russian people, to make them see what's really happening, to smash through the lies and the propaganda of the Kremlin, and perhaps even, eventually, to sow some seeds of discontent, rage and rebellion among the population. Because the angrier the Russian people become, the harder it will be for Putin to placate them. Now, find out more about rising levels of resentment of the Russian population, especially among indigenous people who have long been exploited and abused by the Kremlin, in this video. Or for an in-depth breakdown of every major Russian failure from the outset of the war right up to the modern day, check out our 19-minute play-by-play of the Kremlin's calamitous decisions. And finally, make sure to subscribe to our channel too, so you can continue to be informed and up to date on all major news and developments from the front lines of Ukraine and beyond.